Introduce myself and say hello. And thank you, sir.
Can you see?
Thank you, Rick. Okay. Are we ready? We're go? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Alex Collier. I want to thank you all very much for coming. This is a very, very special treat for me. I love these small, intimate settings here, these living room type of things, because I'm very comfortable, and when I'm definitely in my element, I like to talk. Okay? And I'm definitely in the mood for a talk fest, as they used to say. The information that I shared this morning, I'm going to go over again briefly, because I went through it so quickly, and some of you weren't there. But essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about the 22 races. And the book that will be ready this spring is going to be called Defending Sacred Ground 2, ET22. Okay? I've been wanting to do this book for 10 years, and now it's time to do it. And the reason it's time is that there's so much going on in our solar system that we all need a scorecard. And I just hope to be able to share the knowledge that's been shared with me as to who these beings are and how they relate specifically to Earth, to us. In a nutshell, we are a composite of a lot of different races, 22 to be exact. It is a physiological fact there are 22 different body types on the planet. And that is the result of the extraterrestrial races. I cannot share everything that I have in 2 hours, because I am sharing the stage tonight with Mike Russ. But I will be around, okay? I'm definitely going to be available, and the information, every couple of weeks, you check the website, the information is going to be put on the website. Okay, so you will have it as soon as it's done and it's proofed and edited. All right? There'll be a hardcover or a bound book version of that, but by then you will already have the information. If it's something that you wanted to purchase at that point to give to friends, it'll be available, okay? But it will be for free, nonetheless. Okay. I'm not going to go into how it all started for me. For 13 years I've been telling that story, and I refuse to tell that story anymore. Okay, if you want to know, you can go to the website, www.lettersfromandromeda.com, and all the information's there, including book 1, which you can download for free. I'm doing that for the video, pretty much. Okay. Now, Earth history, we are taught a very, very shallow version of Earth history. We are also taught that we evolved from a single cell, that essentially we were an accident. Okay, all of us are just an accident. And something happened, something really weird, but yet something miraculous happened to a couple of chimpanzees, and ta-da, here we are. Okay? Should it be so simple? In fact, I like the real version much better than the concocted version. Okay? And so what we're going to talk about, what I'm going to start with, is I'm going to start with some of the Earth-taught timelines of history, and I'm going to blow through specific periods and just move it through to prove a point. This will be much more specific in the book. Okay? Earth formation. We're going to start with the Precambrian time, 4.5 billion years ago to 554 million years ago. Earth-taught history. The Earth is forming, along with other planets in the solar system. Earth is being born. Life is awakening. The first tectonic plates are beginning to move. Fungus, plants, animals, and organisms are developing, and the atmosphere is becoming enriched with oxygen. Okay? Extraterrestrial taught history, or I should say Andromedan taught history. An ancient race known as the Founders who the Andromedans and the Pleiadians believe is an ancient race called the Paatal. That's P-A-A-T-A-L. Is on an engineering program whereby environments of planets and terraforming is being done. They are doing this to make these planets and star solar systems suitable and habitable for organisms and for life. Rendering ecosystems that are filled with hydrogen, oxygen, methane, and ammonia. Okay, now take ecosystems, one being oxygen, or some being oxygen, some being methane, some being ammonia, and some being hydrogen. Now these are all gases. For the introduction and colonization of microorganisms, nanites, and all types of life forms. Self-replicating machinery and the bombardment by comets and planetoids to change the rotation and the chemistry of the planets. We'll get to the self-replicating machinery here in a little bit. The practice and engineering of removing moons to alter a planet's rotation and moving planets closer and further from their suns to either decrease or increase radiation received by the planets. Now, I want you to know that that specific engineering feat of moving planets closer and further away from the sun, moving moons, adding moons, is a practice that is absolutely in full swing today throughout the galaxy and in other galaxies. Okay? It is solar system building. This happens a lot. There are races, even the Andromedans are capable of creating a solar system. Okay? All projects, it appears, were designed to render many star systems and many planetary bodies habitable for organic life. Small machines have been discovered that were built so long ago that no one really knows for sure who built them. They cannot be replicated, and no one knows exactly how they were built. Now, I'll give you an example of the Andromedans. The Andromedans are approximately 43 to 4,500 years more advanced than we are technologically. Now, that's in our years, all right? Now, in our years here, need more leash? Okay, a year for us equals 365 days. Okay, this is one rotation around our sun. The Andromedans count years in a completely different way. In fact, almost all the extraterrestrials do. And their concept of age, of counting, especially in this way, what they consider a year is when every cell in their body has been fully replicated. Now, if we did that, 1 year would be equal to 7 years in our body. Okay, so it takes approximately 34 years for their bodies in our time to replicate every cell in their body in our time. Okay? So it's hard to give you exact dates of when they say something happened to put it into our timeline, okay, of years. Okay? Because in reality, if I say it was 4,000 years ago, then it's a lot longer than that. Okay? But they've had a very hard time explaining to me exactly in our Earth time because they don't deal with the concept of time. You know? They just don't. All right? So, but I'm giving you these numbers in Earth years just to give you an idea of how vast our history is. Okay? Now, amazingly, these machines still work. The machines do not have a name in the English language. Okay? They don't even have a symbol that we could comprehend. So, it's been explained to me that it is considered an antimatter machine. Okay? It creates matter. It creates molecules, which then create atoms, which then creates physicality. And these are actual machines. They're like computers, where you can program it for what you want, and this machine will literally bring it forth and manifest it. And there it is, physically there. Okay? Now, if each one of us had one of these machines, it would be like winning the lottery every day. You know? Mike likes to do VWs. He could make himself a new VW as soon as the new models came out. As soon as he knew what he wanted. Okay? I could create a babysitter. You know? So that my wife and I could go out. Okay? And that's what now, apparently there are 7 of these actually working, and 7 different races have one of these machines. Now, these are archaeological finds, discoveries, these atom-making machines, for lack of a better word.
Is that on the Earth?
I'm sorry?
Is that on the
There is one on the planet. There is one here. Yes, there is. What?
Is that the one on Jerusalem?
No comment. No comment.
Do you know where they were found?
Nobody knows. Absolutely nobody knows. It turns out that, well, let me just finish reading here, okay? And because all this will come out. They also discovered advanced building complexes, very large machinery, and complete terraforming ecosystems. Earth-like organic life is much less common than hydrogen gas ecosystems in our galaxy, because we are limited, oxygen O2 ecosystems are limited to the geological presence of water. Okay, for O2 life forms, which is what everything is on this planet, there has to be water. So, the most precious thing that we have is our ecosystem, our biosphere. The second most important precious thing we have is, of course, the water. And when we get to Nibiru, I'm just going to throw this out there, the entire planet used to be fresh water. Okay? Our entire planet used to be fresh water. The oceans were salinated. Okay? And it was the Nibiru from the star system of Butes that did that, because they wanted to control the water. Okay?
They salted the sea.
They salted the sea. That's right. So now all you have is, at the time when they did this, there was only 4% fresh water, and they had total control over it. That's correct.
What was the years again?
That they did this?
No, how long? 36 years?
It took 36 years. 36 years to completely salinate the oceans. And it also gave time for all the life forms in the water to adapt very slowly. But we couldn't drink the water after that. Okay?
Is that 36 of our years?
Of our years. These are all in our years. It's the only way I'm going to present this to you. Otherwise, it'll get way too confusing.
Okay.
Okay? So, hydrogen ecosystems are much more abundant, as are methane, and because they are not complicated ecosystems. O2 ecosystems are very, very complex. The most complex in the galaxy. Archaeological evidence, records, and legends point to the founders, quote unquote, the Patal, as the creators and caretakers of this galaxy. The disappearance and or extinction of the founders appears to be deliberate. And what that means is, and how it's been explained to me, when they use, we all know what disappearance means, but to the Andromedans, when they refer to extinction, if there is no physical record of them on third density, they're extinct on third density. That doesn't mean that they're gone. It could be that they evolved or ascended to a higher frequency, or they dropped down to a higher frequency to create third density, and when they were done, they left. But they are extinct on third density. Okay? See, in sharing this information, this particular information that I'll be sharing in the next year, it's important to stretch yourselves to try to think holographically here, okay? Because there are so many implications to this information, and it's difficult to try to express that because the English language is so limiting, you know, to try to give you a concept about how this was all done. When the Patal apparently left, according to the archaeological record, other life forms, sentient life forms, reptilian, human, plasmic, methane life forms, all begin to appear and do appear in our galaxy in full form. Okay, now just think about that. They appear in full form. That means that they came from someplace else, or they were brought from someplace else. There was no millions and millions of years worth of evolution into this. Okay? And this is the same problem that our archaeologists have on planet Earth. Okay? They keep espousing evolution, but there's just no proof of the evolution in the geological, archaeological record. There just isn't. Things appear fully formed. Okay? It's amazing stuff. Now, are the Patal archangels? Are the Patal the gods? Nobody knows what they are, which is why they just refer to them as the founders, because they don't know. Okay? They don't know. The Andromedans do say that there is a creator. They, in their belief systems, in their traditions, say that it does not carry a dominant male frequency. In their opinion, it carries a dominant female frequency. Okay? So, in their opinion, and I'm telling you, they're real men. You know, the creator is a goddess. Okay? Does exist. Okay, so we blew through that. The Paleozoic era, 554 million years ago to 245 million years ago. A dramatic explosion of diverse, multi-celled animals. Well, they put that because suddenly everything is there. It's in the geological record. They don't know how it got there, where it came from, but it's there. So they just say, well, it just exploded. There it is. All these different things show up out of nowhere. Species appear with all living animals, almost all living animals and species appear within a few million years. Again, there's no evolutionary process here. They just begin to see them in the archaeological record. And each consisting on different parts of our modern continents. Now, at the time that this was happening, the North and South Pole were different. Okay, the planet was literally laying on its side. It had already had a pole shift, one of its many pole shifts. Okay, which is where the physical North and South Pole rotate, usually following a magnetic pole shift if it's done on its own. If it doesn't do it on its own, that is because a planetoid or an asteroid hit the planet, made it roll, and then what happens is the magnetic poles will either correct it over time and make the planet rotate back, or magnetic poles will follow. Okay? I do not understand the mechanics of that. The west coast of North America ran east and west along the equator. Africa was the South Pole. Okay? Suddenly, during this period, 245 million years ago, 90% of all marine and animal life becomes extinct. Okay? Animal life. Not plant and fauna. Okay? Marine and animal life. Now, you would think that if something really dramatic happened, that everything would be affected. But that's not what happened. Okay? It was mammal and animal life. Okay. The same period, 544 million to 245 million. The ET history. The Andromedan ET history. Races in the solar system begin to develop space travel. Most are only able to travel within their own star systems. Some, however, are able to travel outside of their respective systems and have begun contact and discovery of other cultures. The start of trade within star systems begins. Trade routes are established and negotiated. The sharing of technology has begun, and the development of new systems of space travel has also begun, because now the space colonies, the different races that have been established here that came in and fully formed, have now figured out how to get off their own planets, and now they're talking to other people, getting different perspectives, and they're sharing ideas, okay, and sharing opinions. I've not touched on this, and I won't touch on it in this lecture, but there were also a lot of misunderstandings, okay, that went on here, especially between the hydrogen planets in cultures and the O2 cultures. And I'll explain why there were some different misunderstandings later on when we get into this. Okay, treaties were forged between star systems and races. One particular race of sentient beings, which was much more advanced in space travel, set out to explore the galaxy. That is the Alpha Draconans, the Seeker. They were the very first, according to the Andromedans, to actually get off planet. And they were, at the time, the most advanced. Okay? They're an incredible race. They are an incredible race. They just have some incredibly ridiculous prejudices and biases. Okay? But that doesn't take anything away from the fact that as a culture, they've done some incredible things, you know, and a lot of other races have learned from them as well. Their spacecraft at the time were hollowed out moons and planetoids, which they refurbished, built out, created their own internal ecosystems, and fitted with propulsion. Some of that using fuel, which is not oil like we have here, but it was some kind of a gel that was mined in their star system. And kinetic engines. They created kinetic engines.
What's kinetic?
Energy. Focused energy. Electricity, a type of electricity. It's my understanding. Let's hold the questions. Let's hold the questions, okay? I have a lot of material to go through. The Mesozoic era, which is 245 million years ago to 65 million years ago. Robin, write down your question, okay, please. Okay, Earth thought history. Mesozoic means middle animals. It is the time during which the world's fauna changed drastically. Now, it didn't change before, but now suddenly it does. And great change in terrestrial vegetation. The dinosaurs evolve. Well, they show up out of nowhere. Okay, and evolve into the Triassic and then Jurassic eras, only then to become extinct. Another planet-hitting asteroid hits the Earth in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Colombia, what is now known as Colombia. Now, were they deliberate? Nobody seems to know if they were or not. But what's interesting is that every time the planet gets hit with an asteroid or there's a pole shift, there's a radical change in the Earth's ecosystem. And what happens is it becomes more and more friendly for human life. Okay? 244 million years ago, we could not live on this planet. There were just too many things out there that would have hurt us. Okay? Extraterrestrial history, 245 million years ago to 65 million years ago. Many planetary civilizations have full space travel. Interplanetary trade is extremely established, and the need for natural resources increases and causes the exploration of the galaxy by advanced sentient beings. Space travel has been in progress and trade for over 17 million Earth years at this point. Okay? 17 million years. Look at what we have accomplished in 4,000 years. Okay? Look what we've accomplished in 4,000 years. Okay? And we know we've been held back, and we also know that there's technology that's been hidden from us. Okay? So, the most well-established star races are the C-Car of Alpha Draconis, or Draco, the Orion star civilizations, and the Lyra Vega star system. Colonization is in full swing. Many planetary alliances set up rules of colonization and are now reaching further and further out into the galaxy. So here, 245 million years ago, our star brothers, okay, our ancestors, because we're the sum total of 22 of these races, our ancestors already had space travel, and they were already setting up rules of colonization amongst themselves. Okay? That's just amazing to me. The discovery of space highways. Space highways are what our scientists theorize to exist as wormholes. Okay? They're space highways. The discovery of these is made during this period. To date, 17 have been discovered in our galaxy alone. 17 wormholes. Okay, and for those who don't know what we're talking about, this is our galaxy, little dots of the stars, and what you have are tunnels that go to different parts of the galaxy. Just to give you a little example. And it's believed, or our scientists theorize, that if you can tap into one, you're on the other end of the galaxy in almost no time, in a blink. Or like the movie Stargate. Okay? That's the idea. Several of these connect to other galaxies. Okay, so, and we all have to assume that at least one of those connecting tunnels would be to the Andromedan galaxy, okay, which is over here. So you've got a hole here. Okay, now you have a way to get there in like 0 time or incredibly fast, so that it's not a situation where you get in your rocket and by the time you get to your destination, everybody's dead because of old age and everything else. Okay? Because the galaxy is huge and it's expanding all the time. Okay. But as the galaxy expanded, many of these tubes of focused time, that's the Andromedan perspective of what a wormhole is. tubes of focused time. I cannot explain it to you any more than that. Because I do have some notes that are still stored away in a storage unit in another state where they have had to be put for safety, and I've not gotten them yet. Okay? In fact, there's 3 boxes of notes. It does not even go there. Okay? These 7... I'm sorry. Some of these tubes have snapped. In other words, as the galaxy expanded, okay, there were breakages in these wormholes or space highways. No galactic races to the present time, and this is as of 11 months ago, Earth time, okay, knew how they were built or who they built them or who built them, and they can't be repaired because we don't know how they were built. Nobody knows how they were built. Okay? There is an assumption by many that the founders created them, which is how they were able to do all of the terraforming and echo building in the galaxy in preparation for life to be introduced here. There is an assumption that that's who built it. The truth is, we don't really know for sure. It could have been built by someone even before them. We don't know. Okay? Because according to the Andromedans, third density as we know it is 21 billion years old. Okay? The universe that we know of, which includes all the dimensions, is 21 trillion years old in Earth years. Okay? Which is a staggering number. Absolute staggering number. Okay, we're going to get to some slides here in just a little bit. Okay. According to Morine and the Andromedans, only 2 of the superhighways, the wormholes, have not snapped in our galaxy. Okay? So out of the 17, 2 are still fully operational. As trade increased, the spread of life forms also takes place. The experimentation of transplanting life forms and vegetation is in full swing. Okay, now let's go back to the dates. 245 million to 65 million years ago. Our extraterrestrial ancestors are now transplanting vegetation and life forms from other systems to other star systems. Okay? The transplanting of life forms is only with life that has potential. Now, what their actual definition of that potential is, I can't tell you because I don't know. But according to Morine, this potential can only develop in complex ecologies. And by far, the most complex ecology or ecosystem in the galaxy is O2, oxygen-based, which is what we are. Truly complex ecosystems only occur in a relatively small number of planets in the galaxy. Now that might be, several billion planets. But when you take into account, how many suns and how many actual star systems we have, it is in fact a small amount. Even though to us, we would say, my God, there's 200 billion Earths out there. I mean, that's a staggering number to us. But in the big scope of things, it's actually a very small amount, because the hydrogen ecosystems by far outweigh all the others. Okay? It follows that a complex ecosystem, planet-wide ecosystem, is the next most valuable thing in the universe to consciousness. Species, however, come and go but a truly rich biosphere will endure as long as it's not compromised. Dinosaurs, birds, and other life forms, fruit trees, are brought to our solar system and transplanted on the three ecosystems in our solar system. They are Earth, Mars, and Uranus. All developed extraterrestrial races have already impressed on their civilizations that conservation of biospheres was and is simply a necessity. Okay? This is 245 million to 65 million years ago. Okay? They were already teaching their children about conservation of the ecosystem. Okay. The Cenozoic era, 65 million years ago to present. Okay? We're going to get through this and then we're going to get really down into some fun stuff. Earth taught history, sometimes called the Age of Mammals, because the largest land animals and mammals show up during this time. It is also the age of flowering plants, the age of insects, the age of fish, and the age of birds. Okay? Andromedan taught history. Our solar system is being visited more and more. Three very complex ecosystems exist here already. Okay, we've already covered that. The first full-time, self-contained biosphere called an Eden. And I'm going to use that word because that's what the Orions called it. That's what the Draco have a different language, but that's what the Orions called it. That's what the Nibiru called it. That's what the Aldebarans called it. And that's what the Pleiadians call it, an Eden, okay? Which is like a garden. It's a fully transplantable biosphere, having everything they need to exist somewhere else. Okay? Now, we do not really appreciate how smart our ancestors are. Okay? Because they don't always travel in very large spacecraft. But what they have learned to do is travel light and make sure that whatever it is that they need, they have or they can grow. Now, virtually every mothership has an internal ecosphere. Every one. Now, we see the scout craft, we see the 4, the 5, the 100-mile craft. The 100-mile may have some kind of an ecosphere inside of it because it has a crew. That crew needs to eat. Okay? So they will create a park-like setting, an ecosphere, inside those spacecraft. Most of the craft that have hit the Earth are just little scout ships. Okay? If a 100-mile mothership hit the Earth, we'd have a pole shift, and everybody would know about it. Okay? But the very large ships, and I'll give you the example of the Andromedan motherships. They're complete spheres, and on the inside, they are complete worlds unto themselves. In the center of these crafts, and they may have as many as 3, they will have ecosystems, parks, as big as 21 miles long. The one that I saw was 21 miles from one end to the other. For me, and it was 900 miles. Okay? And for me to literally see every inch of that ship would take 25 years. That's how big it was. Had everything. Everything. In these parks, you could not even tell that you were in a spacecraft. You would think you were in a park, you know. Agoura Hills, California, Rocky Mountain National Park, Central Park, although I wouldn't necessarily want to hang out there. You know, Central Park, but, you know, without the crime. Okay? And they're complete unto themselves. Everything is grown aboard the craft. So, when they come here, and they send a team down to the surface of a planet, and they say, okay, we're setting up we're setting up an Eden because we're going to leave you, a team of you here, to research the life, the plant life, the geology of the planet, the minerals, what it has, okay? What they do is they literally drop, can be as many as 12 type of cylindrical antennas. They plant these antennas down into the ground, at least a mile into the ground, and when they flip these things on, they connect. And when they connect, when they turn on and they connect to each other, they create a dome. Okay? A dome. It's a frequency dome. And then all they do is they unload the plants, they unload the fruit trees, everything they need, and this biosphere is exactly to match their physiology. Doesn't have too much oxygen, doesn't have too much carbon. It's exactly what they need. It can even be hydrogen. Can even be hydrogen. Because what it means is then, once they leave, they just wear a spacesuit and they can go out and do their work. But when they come back for doing their work, they enter their biosphere, and it's like living on the home planet. Okay? This is what I'm talking about. This is what an Eden is. Okay? This is what Richard Hoagland's been talking about all those years with the dome structures. This is what he's talking about. This is what these things were for. Exactly. Okay? It's good stuff. God, it gives me the chills. Okay. The very first one was founded in North America, what is now North America. Okay? Along what is now known as the New Mexico-Arizona border. And it was founded by and established by the COLLIER, which are a hydrogen-based life form. Okay? So they had to have something like this. Now, hydrogen is a gas, okay? It's not something we can use. We can't, our physiology simply will not allow us to breathe and live in an environment like that. But hydrogen, the beings tend to be very large. They tend to be a little bit slower in movement. Their body frequency, the rhythms of their biosystem are much, much slower than O2. And the one thing about hydrogen-based life forms is that they cannot go faster than the speed of light in space travel. They can't. Where O2 have been known to go 4 times the speed of light. Okay? And that's been a real problem for the hydrogen-based beings. Okay? In lectures years ago, I talked about how prejudice is an extraterrestrial perspective. That's what I've been taught by Morine Faceus. Okay? So all the prejudices we have, we've learned. We've formed some of our own, okay? But the initial not liking any of your own race was taught to us by these guys, okay? Millions and millions of years ago. Okay. Now, this first Eden was created 899,701 Earth years ago. Okay? And this was by the COLLIER in New Mexico, Arizona border. Okay? They still fancy the desert.
still fancy.
They still fancy the desert, the reptilians. Okay? This biosphere was first inhabited by caste. Now, the reptilian civilization is three castes, is a caste system. Okay, it's a monarchy, but it's also a caste system. And you will find that it is stunningly similar to those in England, okay, in Europe, where you have royalty. Okay, you have the officer class, which is your dukes, your earls, okay, and then you have your peasants who do all the dirty work, literally do all the work. Okay, it's exactly like that. According to Mornay, this first biosphere was built by the officer caste or officer class of reptilian beings, and they were the first to stay here. It was not actual royalty. Okay? Okay, everybody have this? Okay. Several thousand years later, Orion, well, actually a couple hundred years later, Orion established an Eden here from the Orion star system. I'm so bummed my wife is missing all this. Okay. If you have your cheat sheet that I handed you, huh? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mike. Okay. In Orion, they come from Rigel and Betelgeuse. Now, okay, that's these systems here. Okay, I'm glad I brought extra. Now, Rigel, the star we call Rigel, the Orions, their name for this planet, for this star system, is Cyclopesis. In their tongue, it is called Cyclopesis. And whenever they go to a formal function of a galactic event, where there are other star races there, and we will get to that, the proper way that they introduce themselves, and this is what the Andromedans do, and apparently it's tradition, and it was done, and everyone, whether they're enemies or not, have agreed to these specific introduction traditions so that there's no misunderstandings. Okay? So they've created traditions, and everybody does it, no matter what. This is what they do. You introduce yourself, you give them your full name, any rank or office, and the star system that you're from. So, Alex Collier, father, because I don't have a rank or an office, okay? Sol system, Terra 3. That's how I would properly introduce myself, so that whoever it is that I'm introducing myself to knows who I am and where I'm from. Now, if you're an extraterrestrial, you're all talking, most of them are telepathic. So therefore, they're giving the same information, but as they're giving the information, they're also flashing star maps because that's what's in their head, you know, and the other races immediately acknowledge that because they get all that, okay? Okay, Orion established their first Eden in what is now called, I'm going to write this down for you, Uramani, China. The date, 763,132 years ago. Okay. Shortly thereafter, Capella, also part of Ursa Major, Ursa Minor. The Capellans established their first full operational Eden 701,237,000 years ago. And theirs was established at the base of Mount Yogin in southern Chile. Next are the Vegans. Now this is not a plant-eating race. I just want to explain that. Okay, they're from Vega. They're also known to us as the Lyrans, who are literally our human ancestors. Okay, they established their first colony 701,655,000 years ago in North Africa, along what is now known today as the Libyan and Niger border. Okay? And I want you to know that on an archaeological perspective, from what I've been told, there in Ethiopia, there are absolute amazing things yet to be dug up there that have been left behind, that, you know, the cavemen did not build. Okay. Okay. Next, we have the Cassiopeans. Cassiopeans, 604,003 years ago. This is an entirely insexual sentient race. That's Algeria, North Africa. And I'm just going to do two more, and then I'll just read the rest. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Okay, the next is Butes. Nibiru, we know them today. They established their first Eden 585,133 years ago in Cairo. What a shock, what a surprise. Okay, Cairo, Egypt. And then Orion sent another team here, 87,300 years ago. And this one was established in Perth, Australia. Now, the Earth was not in the position that it's laying in now. Okay? If you were to take the planet as it is today and lay it literally on its side, this is where they were colonizing. But these are the locations we know today. Okay? Now, some of the colonies, after they'd been here for some time, they packed up and they left. They got all the information they wanted. Okay, but the Earth is in constant flux. You got to remember, many of these are hydrogen-based extraterrestrials, hydrogen-breathing extraterrestrial races. So when they go to their home planet, it's dull compared to the very complex ecosystems that O2, that oxygen breathers have and live with. Okay, so they're extremely fascinated, and according to Mornay, what they were trying to do was to not only study the vegetation and life forms here in oxygen oxygen-breathing ecosystems, but they were also trying to genetically manipulate them so that they could take them home and make them hydrogen. That's what a lot of this was about. Okay? This is where, you know, they became geneticists, master geneticists, is trying to convert O2 life forms to hydrogen life forms. Okay? Because we're blessed. Oxygen breathers are blessed with very complex ecosystems, very magnificent ecosystems. Okay. Lyrans, again, came back 83,400 years ago. Has anybody ever been to Basque country? To the Basque? Right. Their language, nobody knows their language, where it came from. It's an ancient Lyran tongue that has survived. It's extraterrestrial. In fact, all of them are. But that one is really, really still close to the original tongue. Okay. Orion came back again, 73,414 years to Mount Neblina on the border of Venezuela and Brazil. Now, 71,933 BC, Lemuria is founded as a collective colony. Many of these races decide, okay, let's just pool our resources. And they move their Edens to a continent in the Pacific. Those star nations were the Lyrans, this is who founded Lemuria, Sirius A, Pleiades, races from Tegeta and Meropa, specifically. Those two star systems, Tegeta and Meropa. Ursa Minor, this is the Lyran star system. You have your cheat sheet. Okay, tells you where the races were from. Okay, we were all fascinated. Everybody's fascinated. Well, I'm not, but a lot of people are fascinated with the Pleiadians. Okay, so we'll leave that up there because we're going to talk about them in a little bit. And Butes, which is Nibiru. This is 71,933 BC. Okay, Lemuria is established as a collective colony. So now everybody's working together. Okay? Good sign. That's a good sign. Okay? It didn't last, however. 57,600 BC. Atlantis is founded. Now, somewhere between the establishment of Lemuria and the establishment of Atlantis, the Pleiadians get pissed off and they leave. Okay? A misunderstanding. They come back. They come back to the star system, and Atlantis is founded 57,600 BC. It's the Pleiadians again, the Nibiru, Antarians, the Hyades, a group from Sagittarius, and the Andromedans make a guest appearance. Ta-da! Okay. Do I need to read those again?
Yes.
Okay. Atlantis, Pleiadians, Andromedans, Butes, which is Nibiru. You know, but you might as well know where they're from. Aldebaran, Antarians, Antarieans, the Hyades, which is right here, and Sagittarians. With the exception of Nibiru, all of these are O2s, okay, that established Atlantis. O2 breathers, with the exception of Nibiru. Some of them, of the Nibiruan tribe, are oxygen breathers, okay, because they come from Cirrus, okay? But those that come from Butes are hydrogen. But they can still operate and function as long as they wear a helmet, okay? So, 31,017 BC, Lemuria is destroyed in war. Exact date is 31,017 BC. 27,603 BC, Atlantis is destroyed. For which? Okay, Lemuria is 31,017 BC, and Atlantis is 27,603 BC.
When you were given the dates before, you didn't do BC. You said that many years ago.
I'm adding BC. It was in my notes. I just didn't do it. I was very quick in running through my notes this morning.
You did mean BC.
Yes, ma'am. That's what I meant. So I apologize for not being more specific.
Okay.
Yes, I take full responsibility for that. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go into, the who's and the what's and how's and why they destroyed each other. But again, let's just kind of go to the cheat sheet here. Actually, let's not. Let's just do this. Let's do this. I'm going to. Actually, I'm doing pretty well here on time. So. Let's talk about the races. Okay? Let's talk about the sea car, Alpha Draconis, the ancestral line of the reptilian races in our galaxy. The sea car themselves, according to legend, do not know exactly where their home system is either. That's how big the universe is, or the galaxies are. Okay, the universe. Okay, that's how big it is. According to the Andromedans, there are 100 billion galaxies known and mapped in the known universe. Now if we can get a 7-Eleven franchises in just one of those in each galaxy, we'd have it made, or a coffee shop, even better, legally addictive stimulants. Let's just do that. Yes. Okay. I'm just going to give you some things about each of the races, or several of the races anyway. Okay, because I want to take a break in just a little bit. And I want to finish up. I want to take some questions, and then Mikey's going to do some sharing. Mike Russ. Okay, the sea car. An absolute amazing race. The oldest known reptilian race in our galaxy. They are, in fact, the only genetic line of their kind that is not extinct. Now, when we talk about that's extinct, they have found remnants of others that came after but were extinct. Most of the reptilian civilizations that we know of today, in Butes, Orion, Capella, the ones that are on the list here that I've given you. Okay? And I, in fact, will put the slide up so that the folks that buy the video will say, well, what the heck is he talking about? Okay? We'll put that up. Okay? And then we'll move it up. They are all genetic manipulated half-breeds of the original sea car race. Okay? Okay? So, just so that you understand that. They stand 18 to 25 feet tall and can weigh up to 2,500 pounds. They're like They're like Tyrannosaurus rexes. You know, they're monsters. Up to 2,500 pounds. They have black, leathery brown scaled bellies. They have multiple abdomens. They have whiskers along their chin and jawline. They had a mating claw and multiple tongues. I'm going to give you some very specific information. A mating claw.
What does that mean?
Honey, Robin, you need a mating claw. Well, we'll find somebody that's got a mating claw. And multiple tongues. Okay? They lay eggs. And what is called a battle hormone is used to accelerate the birthing process. Yes. They are a duality. This is why ancestral females did not participate in war. It's because if they did, there wouldn't be anybody there to help with the eggs. Okay? They also have to be there to secrete this hormone. Okay? I'm only sharing with you what I know about them, okay? I'm sure there's a lot of questions. Okay. Did not participate in war. Stronger young females were expected to defeat and kill older and weaker leaders in ritual combat. The COLLIER race is ruled and managed by genetic lines, genetic lineage. And genetic lineage always follows the mother, because you always know who the mother is. You don't always know who the father is. Okay? So, you know, in that particular line, the gals have all the say. Ruled by a monarchy of a queen genetic lineage, they are one of the most powerful races in the galaxy. They have some of the greatest military might that has ever been seen in the galaxy. And most of the clan members are zealots and will do anything for the glory of their clans, of their lineage. They have been the chief enemy of all human races in this galaxy in past conflicts. Again, we're talking about hydrogen. Hydrogen breathers versus oxygen breathers. They have 3 spinal columns. One spine is located ventrally near the stomach. The other 2 are located dorsally on the left and on the right of the COLLIER's body. The spinal columns join near the dorsal of the geometric center at the extreme posterior of the trunk to form a long and very powerful tail. Inside of the hands or claws of the COLLIER are jelly-like sacs that excrete various hormones and substances when the COLLIER is aroused, either for sex or for battle. The primary purpose of these enzymes is to initiate encrusting of sperm. Okay. There is an amazing amount of life out there, and they look at us and they think we're beasts as well. Honestly. Okay. Now, I'm going to talk about the Lyrans. Now, when I'm talking about the Lyrans, and then I'm going to talk about the human race as a whole, about some other things here. I've got some pretty good notes. I'm also talking about us, okay, and our ancestors, and all the ancestors of the ancient Lyran line, genetic line. Okay, now before I even get to that, I'm going to read the first sentence that I have on humans. The human race is unusual in having all of its members' race derive from one genetic line. Okay, that's an amazing thing. That is an amazing thing. Okay, so now let's talk about the Lyrans, and then we'll talk about humans some more. Okay, we'll talk about the Lyrans. Their skin color is amber, blue, and or red. The color of the stars in their planetary systems is what caused their skin tint to change. Okay, depending upon the frequency and the UV ultraviolet scale of their stars. Okay. They're mammalian descent. Okay. They are the only human race to have full empathy senses and full psionic abilities, and have experienced quantum probability control. I'm still working on that. Okay? Well, you gotta understand, these are extraterrestrials who know what this all means, okay? Okay, I'll read it again. They were the only human beings to have full empathy sense, full psionic abilities, psionic, and have experienced quantum probability control. Okay. They are also considered today a retired race that has very little intercourse with other main civilizations. In the past, on Earth, they were known Yes, that's what they were known as.
I can't read the writing, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Bodhisattva. It's Bodhisattva. Yep. Ta-da! The lights go off. That's great. You know, that's great. Okay. They have been known to monitor and provide guidance for some planetary systems. Some planetary systems today see them as their protectors and guides. They're worshipped, in other words. What's interesting is that the Lyrans prefer to live on ringed worlds. They just have a preference for living on ringed worlds. And on the Andromedan Council, they are known as an elder race, which carries great prestige on the Council. Because extraterrestrial civilizations, ladies and gentlemen, really pay close attention to genetic lineage. Okay, now we're going to talk about the human race as a whole. The Andromedan, how the Andromedans see the human race. Okay. I'm doing this for the people at home so that they can all write this down. Okay. Some of this will be a little bit familiar because I've touched on it, but we're going to talk about it again. The human race is unusual in having all of its member races derive from one genetic line. This accounts for the remarkable casual interactions of the great human civilizations. But for better or for worse, human galactic civilizations, even if they compose a single clan, have diverse evolutionary histories. Okay? Each culture is very different in the way that they've evolved. Okay? Not as a species, but as a culture. Okay? I want to be specific to that. And misunderstandings and conflicts have occurred. Traditions exist to minimize the likelihood of misunderstandings and to lessen the negative consequences of any miscommunications that might occur. So they put in place, they were sentient enough to know that they needed to put things in place to try to minimize human versus human war. Okay? Well, not on this planet. No, it didn't. You know, and I think they're still working on it. Okay? In addition, the behavior of individuals does reflect on the species and the clan. Okay, now this is an Andromedan race, an Andromedan human race sharing this with us. Okay? That individuals, the actions of individuals of those races does reflect on the entire clan. Okay? None are faulted for polite or proper behavior. Informality is always at risk of being misconstrued or miscommunicated. The traditions of human interaction were developed by the ancestors over the ages. When an elder race insists that a new civilization observe traditions, okay, an example, the Andromedans come down, they introduce themselves, they say, okay boys, it's time to go to the show. Okay, it's time to go to the show. What happens is, in the show being the Andromedan Council, we are being asked to be invited to the Andromedan Council. What they will do is they will teach us the tradition, the proper way of introducing yourself, of acting before all these other civilizations. Because you will be misinterpreted if you walk in, hey, oh man, what's happening? You know, it'll be completely misunderstood. Okay? Yo, blood, what's up? That a young civilization observe traditions. It helps the young races build a culture that will function well in galactic civilization, as well as help guarantee that this young race will become a virtuous and productive member of the galactic commonwealth. That's exactly Mornay's verbiage. I took it word for word. The galactic commonwealth. Okay? It is important that all humans be as polite as possible. This helps both the young and the old cultures, because many old are socio-biologically dependent on ritual. They have become so conditioned that this is just the way you do it. And their civilizations, their traditions are so deeply embedded that they're not going to change. Okay? We have that same situation here on our planet. We do. And can be psychologically disturbed by informal and rude behavior. That's what he says. If the occasion calls for it, apologize and then speak only when spoken to. Never touch a fellow elder race person unless you are specifically asked to. Now, that leads me to something that I was taught which I did when I was brought on board, and I met other races. And this is what the Andromedans do when they meet another race, okay? And I was taught to teach this to everyone here, which I've done, so I'm going to do it again. When you have a contact and you're standing before an extraterrestrial or extraterrestrials, stand, yourself square, you bow, never taking your eyes off of them, and you say, "It is the manner and custom when entering my space that permission be asked." You say it very clearly, because what you are doing is you are declaring your sovereignty and you are declaring your space. All right? Because we are not that well thought of. So it's important to do something like this. You got 10 seconds to make a good first impression. It is the manner and custom when entering my space that permission be asked.
Is that done verbally or?
Yes, well, we would have to. We would have to do it verbally. They would probably respond telepathically.
And if we didn't say that?
There's always the possibility that your space will be violated.
I mean, they would violate them probably.
Well, the Greys would. The Dows would, absolutely. But nobody knows to do that, And besides, they wouldn't approach you that way. They always steal you out of bed, because they're little friggin' cowards. No, I don't have any charge on that. Okay. Physically disturbed and spoken to. Most human galactic races have 3 languages. And these difference markers are formal, informal, and differential. Now, the differential apparently is what's used in a lot of politics, galactic politics, that particular language. The formal is when you are addressing your own race, like State of the Union. It's also when you are talking to elders. If I'm a young person, I'm a young Terran, and I'm addressing an elder of my race, I'm to use the formal. Okay? The informal is informal. Yo, blood, what's happening? Okay? Okay. The informal marker is not used ever in public. Always ask if both parties are comfortable with the informal language. So I would have to say, Mike, do you mind if I talk trash? And Mike would have to say, sure, man, talk trash. Okay? And then we're both agreed and I can talk trash. It's probably a bad example, but okay. The informal marker is always used, the formal marker is always used in public, because you always want to regard your partner in conversation as worthy of respect. The prestige of a mature race is always subject to debate. The general rule of respect, the general rule is the first measure of the general rule of prestige is, number 1, the age of the race. Okay? The age of the race. The second index is the race's lineage. Okay, it all comes back to genetics. The third index is the number and size of the race, or the clan, or the tribe. Okay? In standard introductions, always include identification by full name, species name, any relevant titles, and your home planetary system.
Which is the clan?
Yes, which is the clan.
Okay.
Name, rank, and
Serial number. Name, rank, species name, and planetary system.
You say Earth, Terra 3?
Earth, Terra 3. Or Sol, S-O-L, Terra 3. Because our star is known as Sol. We are Terra, which is third planet Okay, third rock from the sun. Now, if you were in Mars, you would say Sol, Terra 4. Okay. Okay. Okay, we covered that. I'm going to talk about the grays. The Dows. D-O-W is how the Andromedans refer to them. You guys want to take a 5-minute break? Want to take 5 minutes? Okay, then we'll come back and we'll continue. Are you guys enjoying this? Okay, great.
I don't like it. Oh, hi.
Okay, well, you're not getting your money back. Okay, cool. We're going to take a break. Joe? Yes.
The hydrogen breathing. They can't survive on
Some of the genetics, some of the cast, how do I put this?
Yeah, the cast.
The bioengineered lower races have been engineered for O2.
What about the royalties?
They have to come here, they have to be in suits. Or some kind of a vehicle that can move along the surface. No, if we were able to get them out of their craft, they would die in a few short moments. Right. Well, they were they're geneticists. They were bioengineered to operate within an O2 environment. Right. But they can't go home. They can't go to their home worlds. Well, they were specifically bred. Yes.
Do you know what those two vampires are? The genres?
Do they know what they are, where they are?
They are.
Yes, they do.
In the galaxy?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't share that.
No. Exactly where they were? No. Knowing, because I would probably talk about it. And the first thing our military would try to do is do something weird, because they're not always sentient beings.
I like that. You should sell a homework to this stuff, and money.
Yeah, do a
Do a Richard Hoagland. Yeah, I've heard. Richard deserves a movie.
He talks fast enough.
He'll promote it all himself and
Yeah.
watch it all night.
Right, and he'll provide all the
That's okay.
That's all I think. Yeah, he's got some good information.
And everybody's got pieces of the puzzle.
Everybody's dying.
Okay. Now, the question was, we're going to talk about the Dows. The Dows are the reticulans, number 7 on your list. Okay, let me change this. D-O-W-S, exactly right. Like Dow Chemical Company, that's exactly right. Okay. Okay, for those of you at home watching the video, okay, the Andromedan word for this particular race, when tweaked and converted into English, is Dows. Okay, they're known as the Dows. Militant race, known to be very hostile to humans. Humans have never been able to successfully negotiate with the Dows. Okay? I'm sure that our military wished they knew about this in the 50s. Okay? Because, they made agreements, they signed treaties, and the Dows have never kept one of them, but they're so technologically advanced that we're having a hell of a time getting rid of them. Okay?
When you say human, you don't mean just dinosaurs.
No, humans. If it was if Morne meant specifically Earth, he would have said Terrans. Okay? But apparently everybody's had a lot of problem with them. Okay? They are known in the inner circles as a pain in the ass. Okay?
That's informal.
That's informal, yes. I'm sorry I didn't ask for permission to be informal.
Consider it family.
I do, actually. I love the small settings. Most avoid them at all costs. They have little empathy, if any at all, for human races, and believe that unworthy species will one day be exterminated. They have participated in all wars of enforcement. I want you to hold that thought. I want you to write that down. Wars of enforcement. Okay? Because we're going to come to that. We're going to come back to that.
But they're hydrogen, right?
Yes, they are. The original ones are. Okay, they are in fact hydrogen. He was probably wearing some kind of an apparatus. The original, the tall, spindly ones. The little ones, you know, the ones that do most of the dirty work, they're of course just organic clones. Okay, and they've been, you know, genetically bred to, you know, do the dirty work in O2 biospheres. Okay. They have participated in wars of enforcement declared by the reptilian alliances. Now, humans have also had wars of enforcement. Okay? And have been attributed with 3 accidental extinctions in the last 10,000 years. The Dows.